This is the Idavox Report.
And we are here for another fun-filled and exciting night here at the Idavox Report. And I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Hi, I'm Daryle. And above me is Brian. And to my this way, that way, Christian Perez. And as you can see, we also have Ash J. And
Hi,
he's
everybody.
a journalist out of New York.
Mm-hmm.
And good friend. And hardcore on the streets out there telling everybody what's going on. So we wanted him to come to the show today because we got a lot to talk about in regards to what the election. We talked about the election last week, but and we was a little disappointed in the results because despite what not because of the same reason that the Democrats were upset. The Democrats actually had a pretty good election day. They only lost one state. The problem we had the wrong Democrats. We had the wrong Democrats winning. So we're going to talk about who might be one of them. So first of all, I just want to say, hey, Brian, hey, Christian, how y'all doing?
Doing okay, Daryle. Just, getting along with the week.
Yeah, man. Hard day's work, but I've been looking forward to this show all day, so it kind of gave me something to keep moving towards, man. I'm glad we're here.
Yeah, and I just want to say, hey, to Ash, how you doing? I mean, the last time we did something was first day of spring. We was over at the we did the anti-fascist get together.
Was it? I saw you recently at Foley Square.
Oh no! It was the Proud Boy thing.
Yeah, the golpistas, the coupists, the January 6th coupists over there were protesting for their political prisoners, quote unquote, in Foley Square. I think that's the last time I might have seen you. It was a shit show. Yeah.
That was so fucking corny. I mean, for those who don't know what we're talking about, a couple of what was it back in July? There was some rallies that were going on over the summer in support of those that were arrested, namely the Proud Boy contingent, and we all came out to basically call them everything but a child of God, and I got into a little shoving match with one of them. Who unfortunately I found out had a rather close relationship to a lady friend of mine. So there were some things that are problematic, and it is what it is. But in any case,
the cops were especially bad that day too. I gotta note because I remember towards the end there were some like anti-fascists walking away. And there were some plainclothes officers coming towards where the golpistas were having their event, and the cops themselves were saying like, "Fucking pussies, you fucking pussies!" The fuck out, like to the anti-fascists walking away. Like the cops
pick a fight,
talking shit, straight up talking shit, like they was like Proud Boys on the street, basically. Like it was outright. I remember one of them. I told him like, "Yo, fuck you, just because you look like Pantaleo, fuck you," but like. These cops were like out there talking shit, like they chose a side that day, obviously, and like it was like they were really bad that day, like especially bad when it came to the shit talking that day. I just want to make a note of that.
Yeah, it's a good thing you made a note of it.
To this day, I see them policing protests, and I notice them to this day. So
Shoot, I want to know that one. See, this is the thing that we're going to have to worry about over the next 4 years. I mean, we've always had to worry about it in New York and in other parts of the country, but it's going to be coming under the guise of a cop who cares. You know, I mean, it's going to be under the guise of somebody who I knew out there, like fighting against police brutality. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there like that. And I mean, the mayor-elect is a guy here, a mayor-elect for New York City, the one who's going to be replacing Bill de Blasio on January 1st, 2022, is a guy by the name of Eric Adams. Now, it wasn't until the primary that I realized that he might be it may be a little problematic. And it kind of, you know, it was really surprising. I mean, cops are going to cop, and I should have just recognized that from the jump. I mean, but the thing was, back in the day, he was seen as one of those cops that was trying to make things better for the community and the police, and trying to fight against police brutality. That's how he was perceived in '99.
That's how and that's also, I want to not just as, I don't want to make it just passive. That's how also he promoted himself as that too. Actively promoted himself that way. And
it turns out now that's really not the case. I mean, when you get endorsements from the New York Post,
exactly. Bill Bratton, the PBA
from Giuliani.
Yes. Yo.
I mean, when you start getting that, then you have to start looking at what's going on. Now, there were a number of other people who were running for mayor. I mean, the closest thing to a positive, a fighting chance was a woman named Maya Wiley.
Yeah, and because Diane Morales fell apart on her own, basically, because her campaign staff basically like unionized, and a whole thing happened, and essentially that campaign fell apart. And she was the closest thing to a defund the police candidate, right? She was the one who proposed $3 billion in cuts to the NYPD. That was her. Maya Wiley was much to her right. And she worked for de Blasio too. She used to work for de Blasio. And she did a whole lot of, she never stood out as like some kind of lefty radical while she worked for de Blasio or anything like that. She was a lawyer, basically. Typical lawyer working with de Blasio. But as a mayoral candidate, she proposed $1 billion in cuts to the NYPD budget.
Oh wow!
And that's what we got, the fake budget cut, which is all a shell game anyway, right? But yeah, I mean, and then so Maya Wiley was the closest thing we had to a defund the police candidate, but even she was like it was very superficial. It was really superficial. She knew she wanted to kind of carry on what de Blasio did before. De Blasio, you remember the first time he ran, he was tailored to cities. I'm going to come and change everything. I'm going to rein in the police brutality. My black son might get stopped and frisked. And like, you know, that's how de Blasio sold himself when he first came in as mayor. And Maya Wiley tried to kind of like do that fake progressive act as well, too, I think. But yeah, even she was too much for the New York Post, because the New York Post was vicious to her. Vicious. She was like a status quo candidate in progressive facade, essentially.
But we weren't going anywhere. There was no chance in seeing anything progressive in New York anytime soon.
And the Post is still vicious to her. Yeah.
So I mean, basically, you take a look at who we ended up with during the general. We had Curtis Sliwa from the Guardian Angels.
Oh, but also before we get to that, we have to also note that the reason why the reason why the road was paved for Eric Adams to coast through those primaries is because the media contrived a crime panic, essentially, and made policing the big issue. I remember back in maybe like very early on in the primaries, before the media got crazy with the crime panic. The big issues were like COVID, basically, or like more economic issues, basically. And then the media machine, local media machine, and then the national media machine basically started pumping out crime is rising. Oh my God, there's the defund the police has made crime go up. Oh my goodness. And that helped Eric Adams, Mr. Cop himself, be able to slide in like, I'm gonna control, the crime on the streets. I'm gonna bring down murder and blah 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 blah. And that also helped him very easily. And then they also used that to like bash Maya Wiley as well, right? They used to say she's a defund the police candidate, and look, crime is going wild. Do you want that? And so the New York Post, like you said, endorsed Eric Adams, and they used that as well.
Read something.
Yeah,
Brian's going to say something. Brian's going to say something first, but I got to read what they say about Eric Adams now.
I mean, I'd like to point out that this is a strategy being used nationally, and it was recently used in Minneapolis to defeat what was billed as defund the police, but which was really like, just kind of recreating the police and adding some mental health services. But the plan still included people with guns walking around enforcing laws. So it was just kind of like let's take this down and put up a new police department. But it was billed as defund the police, and the mayor, who, if everybody can remember, got booed out of a big gathering of everybody, also won his re-election, as well as that bill was defeated over there in Minneapolis. So, it's all about portraying things as overly violent, and the way they did it was the police unions were using the same tactic of portraying the community as overly violent. And what's being portrayed really is that people of color are inherently violent. I mean, it's essentially what the police unions put forward as a campaign. And I heard that report today, and then hearing you talk about it, I was like, oh, this is the same fucking report, except for it's in New York instead of Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
What I would say, so basically, for those who weren't following New York, the New York mayoral race, it was basically between Curtis Sliwa of the Guardian Angels and Eric Adams. So it was a cop versus a vigilante, but there were no good guys in this entire race. Yeah, really.
And the wannabe cop was worse than the actual cop. That's the horrible thing. This is the shit show where we have in New York.
What organizations came out to support Adams? Because I know that he's a landlord. I know that he's the guy that's, he's the guy that's going to stand between tenants and tenants' rights. So what? I know he's got money from like big money donors, but like, what are there? Liberal organizations, conservative organizations? Who's coming out and putting their stamp, their seal of approval on Adams? Can you name any organizations that are doing that?
Not off the top of my head, but you definitely got. I mean, at one point during the campaign, he had a picture of him having dinner with Bo Dietl and John Catsimatidis. And the reason why, so anyone who doesn't know, John Catsimatidis is a billionaire right-wing radio host asshole, and Bo Dietl is a fascist cop. So they were having dinners at Rouse, some upscale restaurant, and the reason Bo Dietl said that Eric Adams was there is because his hedge fund pals couldn't make it, so he invited Eric Adams instead. And Eric Adams definitely has support the financial support of developers, the cop unions, freaking the real estate industry, like. Every corrupt special interest industry in New York City you can think of basically got behind Eric Adams. He is the candidate of the machine, basically.
Yeah, why does this strategy seem to keep working in a place like New York City, right? I mean, the question could be asked anywhere. I mean,
it's just a continuation of New York City corrupt politics, essentially, right? This is like a long tradition in New York City and all the big cities in the United States, essentially, right? Like machine politics, corrupt politicians running shit and superficially and kind of like astroturfing their own campaigns and their own support in order to keep themselves in office and keep the show going for like the rich in the city, the special interests in the city. Like here in New York, it's the real estate industry, the developers, basically. They have a very big say in like, which politicians get up to even be elected, you know what I mean? And so, I think it's just a continuation of a long tradition here in the city and in the cities across the country, essentially. It'd be an aberration for us to actually get democracy. Like, that'd be the aberration. That'd be like the weird thing.
Brian, you had something to say?
According to the city.nyc, he lobbied for firms such in Gowanus, managed a nonprofit called the Brooklyn Fund.
One Brooklyn Fund, yes.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Fund. He's supported rezoning on the behalf of major developers, Property Markets Group, and the Bluestone BK LLC, Property Managed Group, A&E Real Estate, and a whole bunch of other really fucking rich people.
Yes, yes.
Now, the beauty about the New York Post, aka Fox News and Newsprint, and that's not even hyperbole. It's actually run by News.
Literally the same country, literally the same company. They're the same company. Yeah.
Wall Street Journal too.
Yeah.
Same building.
But
literally
the New York
building.
Post. Let me tell you something. The New York Post is so bad that this is my 30-year file of the stupidest shit that the New York Post has ever been about. So you don't have to tell me. And they just added more in their praise of Eric Adams. It's great that they're around because they just give away the story. Everything that you suspect about this crowd, they basically tell you, yeah, you're right. And here's what they say. They say Mayor-elect Adams continues to earn, and this was done. Let me see what the date on this editorial that they wrote. Oh, this was yesterday. So it says Mayor-elect Adams continues to earn plaudits for his consistent and sound stands on the things that average New Yorkers care about. Calling himself a conservative on crime, Shirley earned booberries from the defund the police ideologues, but they didn't elect him in the first place. And he's showing the same good sense on new issues as they arise. On Sunday, he told CNN viewers that he's looking forward to an end of school mask mandates.
There it is.
The socialization of a child is that smile, he noted.
That's how he beat Sliwa.
Yeah.
Nor is that his only sound signal. Now, this is where they get really interesting. So he's also vowed to restore the gifted and talented programs the current mayor wants to kill. And last week, he rightly called the city Department of Education one of the greatest embarrassments. The mayor-elect is outraged that taxpayers are spending over $30 billion a year on schools, yet a full 65% of Black and brown children never reach proficiency. Now, it's really interesting because the New York Post never really gave a shit about how Black and brown children were taught.
Yeah. Let me guess. The solution is never going to be hire more teachers, shrink classes. That's never they're going to spend millions of dollars on think tanks and all these talking heads, and they're going to have all these new ideas for education. And education is
throwing more cops in the schools.
Yes. Education is simple. Education is easy, and we make it hard. Literally, more teachers, smaller classes. That's it.
Yeah, and the fact that the New York Post is basically trying to suggest that Eric Adams is going to change all that, is endorsing things that that sound nice on paper. Says that
just the fact that he's talking about mask mandates like the way he is kind of a signal to like who he's listening to and who he's talking to. Like
exactly. So. Which is funny because if you talked about who endorsed him, Christian, you said I'm looking at his campaign his campaign website, and his endorsers, not a single right winger. Let me see what they got. Mom of slain New York City teen Junior Guzman endorses Eric Adams. David Patterson and Keith Wright endorse Eric Adams. Eric Adams wins mayoral endorsement from George Floyd's brother. Danny Glover endorses Eric Adams for New York City mayor. Labor leaders like the Hotel Trades Council, Service Employees.
Oh, the Carpenters Union. Oh goodness, yeah.
But this is what Ash was saying. I mean, he's got. I mean, like he's got that institutional support. I mean, and he's able to sell himself as, because it's the Obama thing. He's Black, so naturally that automatically gives him certain points to certain people because he's that. The right wing can project whatever they want onto him and make him some kind of boogeyman. And then liberals get to eat it up and treat him like he's the second coming of Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. I mean, that's how de Blasio essentially sees them. Yeah, it's the same playbook we see with black liberal politicians and Black liberal leaders. It's
But
For the course.
he was also endorsed by Elliot Engel, Charlie Rangel,
Yeah.
Gregory Meeks, like the most corrupt
Yeah.
scumbags of New York City politics. Like, and so just the fact that he's endorsed by like the most corrupt, scummy politicians in New York
Yeah.
should let you know exactly what he's all about. And he's always been this way too. It's not like when he was in 100 Blacks in law enforcement who care. He was like he was a good guy or anything like that. I think it's been a steady process of self-promotion essentially and careerism.
Yeah.
And he just sees what he can do at the moment. He's an opportunist as well. He sees what he can do at the moment to advance himself. And this is where it's got him. It's got him all the way to fucking being mayor right now.
Yeah.
Like, look at that.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. He's got the formula that's gotten him to where he's at. But I want to remind our viewers that, I mean, for people that aren't familiar with New York, New Jersey, Chicago, politics is done a little bit differently in these states. When we tend to think of political cultures, there's like a northern political culture, there's a southern political culture that's obviously rooted in white supremacy, former Jim Crow. The northern political machines in places like Boston, very much rooted in the old what do they call it, patronage systems and so on and so forth. But in New York, New Jersey, and Chicago or Illinois, to be more specific or to expand it, it's the politics is different. It's not necessarily more as ideological as it is in other places. It's more big business oriented. It's more handshake deal and backroom deal oriented. And because New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, many of these parts are Democratic strongholds. In the absence of Republicans, the Democrats become the villains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like Eric Adams himself went from being a Democrat to Republican, then back to a Democrat. I mean, it just goes to show you how it means nothing in New York City. Like, what party you're in? 'Cause the Democrats run every fucking thing, basically, and we still have a racist police state in New York City and New York State, basically.
Giuliani would still be getting accolades if he'd have just kept his mouth shut. If Giuliani hadn't buddied up with Trump, they'd still be treating him like he's America's mayor. But
seriously,
because he couldn't shut the hell up, now everybody sees how big of an idiot he was. But he was a Republican, and the city loved the guy.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when you talk about Giuliani, here's the thing that started his ascension. We, the Black community, started to push back on a lot of the BS that we had been putting up with for a good, maybe I want to say for a good 40 years. Of course, it was longer. I'm not going to sit there and pretend I'm not cognizant of that, but it was really at a point after, I would say, Bensonhurst. Bensonhurst was really the last straw. Edward Koch was the mayor at that time, and he was no friend to people of color, to the communities that were underrepresented in the city, shall I say. And enough was enough for a lot of folks, and that's how David Dinkins got in there. David Dinkins was the shot across the bow, and they raised holy hell trying to
everything. And he wasn't even all that. He wasn't even all that. He tried to be nice to these people.
And that was all that mattered.
He tried to be nice to these fucking fascist cops too. He tried his best.
It's the Obama, like I said, it's the Obama technique.
Yeah, it's exactly the Obama technique. That's what. See, I always try to tell people that New York was the petri dish for what we call the alt-right. It was where a lot of the alt-right folks, and rather the really hardcore suit and tie racists, got skin in the game. I mean, there was a radio talk show host on WABC named Bob Grant. I bring him up every now and again, that promoted straight up white supremacists on his radio station, on his radio show on 77 WABC. Wow. And he came on right after Rush Limbaugh. And that was what I was listening to. And I remember one time I was listening to his show after Dinkins lost. There was somebody that called this show and said, after David Dinkins, there will never be another we will never elect another black mayor to this city, because this is what we get when we do it. And right then and there, and I said, well, one, that's not true, because it's going to happen. But on the other hand, that black person, that black mayor will be a mayor that the New York Post will like.
And yeah, yeah.
Sure
It
fucking
literally had to be a cop. It literally had to be a cop.
It had to be a fucking cop.
It had to be a fucking cop. It had to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we spent so we had 8 years of Giuliani acting like an asshole, but being praised for it. Diallo is what killed that for him. Diallo, I mean, that's why Luima, yeah, kind of, sort of. This is the file that I have on that that I have from the Abner Luima days. But when Diallo went down, all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
So, but it killed Giuliani's career until September 11th. Then he became America's mayor. Then he became the toast of the town. And I remember it was really interesting because when he ran for mayor, they would talk about his divorce. They would talk about how he was cool with the LGBTQ community, but he would not talk about, and no one would talk about his relationship with the Black community, his tough on crime stance. None of that came up when he was running for president.
And around this time period, you have to also talk about the Manhattan Institute. And when you're talking about like how New York was a petri dish for the alt-right, the Manhattan Institute, this was almost the height of their power here in New York City, basically. Giuliani, because Giuliani was essentially a Manhattan Institute, almost like avatar, essentially, right? So yeah, the damage that white supremacist think tank has wrought to this fucking day.
And I brought up the Manhattan Institute in the past, and every time, see, the sad thing about the Manhattan Institute, and I don't want to leave y'all out of this, Christian Brian, but the Manhattan Institute doesn't get talked about enough. I was watching John McWhorter segment on he has a new book out. John McWhorter is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. We brought up the Manhattan Institute because they are the ones that are pushing all the anti-critical race theory stuff. That's where it starts from. It is that place that it's starting from. They're also the ones who gave us the senior fellow named Charles Murray, who wrote The Bell Curve. And there's also a woman named Heather McDonald. Who is everybody's favorite idiot, who wants to say that racial profiling doesn't exist, but it should. To try to pretend that
foaming mouth fascist. Oh my goodness, this woman is just like vicious to Black and brown people, vicious racist. And apologizing and defends racist violence all the time. Like, oh my goodness.
In fact, I wrote an article about one of those times. She wrote an op-ed piece about racist violence coming from white extremists, and she tried to pretend that it didn't exist. But those who are complaining about white racist extremists should, and this is a direct quote, be careful what you wish for.
Oh, God.
She actually wrote that down, and the Wall Street Journal printed it, and I'm sitting there looking at it going, thank you for playing, you harpy.
And these fascists will straight up threaten you, straight up in the newspapers, the biggest papers, straight up threaten violence on you, openly threaten violence on us. Like, oh my goodness.
And I
they tell you who they are.
Using the term harpy, I try to stay away from crap like that, but I was pissed when I saw that.
And the Manhattan Institute also pushed hard, and for broken windows policing, which is
Manhattan Institute. Yes.
Which Eric Adams thinks is fine, as well as stop and frisk. The Manhattan Institute was really big into stop and frisk. Eric Adams nowadays tries to front like he was like pushing for reform in the days of stop and frisk, whatever. When basically his only beef with stop and frisk, as it was done in the Bloomberg days, is he thinks it was just done too much. If you had like just decreased it to a right amount, there's a dial you can turn. Yeah, you can turn a dial. And there's a point at which there's a good amount of stop and frisk. So for that he considers himself a reformer, a reformist.
Yeah, less harassment is the solution instead of no harassment.
And by the way,
less harassment.
And by the way, one more note on the Manhattan Institute. Margaret Kimberly brought them up. I mean, well, I brought them up, but Margaret Kimberly made the point that New Jersey is not above the fray when it comes to Manhattan Institute, because apparently our Senator Cory Booker was an intern with them at one time.
Oh, are you serious? No way.
That's what Margaret Kimberly said. I gotta check that out. Actually,
his career,
Mr. Drink your milk and take your vitamins and say your prayers, Cory Booker.
So I mean, I don't know where that. I really want to check and see what the hell he was doing there, but I damn sure gonna find out. But
he's getting his education.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, but look, I have to say this. So like, I went to school for political science, got my master's degree. The recession really killed my chances of getting, finding professional work in that field. But I mean, but that's the field, right? You get your degree from a college, it doesn't matter, but who's going to hire you? It's going to be some think tank. If you're lucky, maybe you go to an NGO, but this is who hires people. But this is it. They get you out of college, they get you when you're young, and then they mold you. They give you a job, they give you some kind of professional identity. And then if you're lucky, you network, and your reward is, being promoted, getting other jobs, but you have to sell your soul. But I mean, I want to impress upon our listeners and our viewers that the Cory Booker is a Democrat, and Cory Booker was presented in New Jersey as like the left-wing answer to Chris Christie. I don't know if you guys remember, they had like that silly commercial that they made where he was like saving the day as Cory Booker and all that. But I mean, but this is how it is. Democrats, Republicans, it's the same think tanks that are funding them. It's the same interests that are funding them. I mean, Cory Booker is presented as some kind of radical, when in reality, he's getting his political education from a right-wing organization. And these are not the organizations that challenge people to question the systems we live under.
Just an example, Eric Adams, of how easily they're bought off is in October 2018, while he was Brooklyn Borough president, he did almost like a promotional video for something called the Bolo Wrap. It's this weapon that cops can use to shoot like a rope.
Oh, the bolos, yeah, and it trips you,
and it wraps around you, right? Eric Adams did almost a promotional video in Brooklyn Borough Hall, demonstrating how cops could use blah blah and promoting it, advertising it, and he was trying to promote it as a reform to say, oh, instead of shooting people, we can use bolo wraps or whatever. Then it comes to find out he was getting paid by the company who makes the bolo wraps. So yeah, this is how easily our new mayor sells out, and then promotes his selling out and his enabling the police state even further as reform on top of that too. Like, it's insulting and pernicious too.
I do have a question that is going to be that we're really going to have to start asking ourselves, and I would like to start asking it before he becomes mayor. We know now that we are going to have ourselves a time when he becomes mayor. I wonder, what can we do as people who are concerned to get in front of it? I mean, I hate to think of the thing that's going to scare me the most is that, yeah, we're going to have somebody that's going to be murdered by the police under Eric Adams. And it's going to be something that he said that he was going to prevent to happen, and he did.
Shout out to Dylan, by the way. I'm sorry. Shout out to Dylan Chambers.
What's up, Dylan?
And Caitlin and everybody
up,
commenting.
Dylan Chambers from Midnight Transit. He was the one that writes our thing that has our that wrote our theme song, Stand Up and Fight. That's his music. Check out Midnight Transit. But I want to know, what can we do? What can we do at this point? Yeah, we had an election. We have to just basically deal with what the election has given us. But how do we deal with what the election has given us? Because we're going to have to right this ship somehow. So what will be your suggestion as somebody who's in the city?
Oh man, jeez. I mean, the fact that we have
what kind of people can we
the
work with? In other words, maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
who's doing good stuff?
the movement right now is a little stuck. Right? That's the thing, man. It's I haven't really gone to many actions lately. I mean, you can everyone can go to like Protest NYC, that Twitter account, and follow them for like what actions to go to, what actions are happening. There's a lot of individual struggles you can focus on too here in New York. Like for example, there's a kid named Mikey Rosado who was killed recently in the Bronx by the New York by NYPD, and the family's still looking for. The cops haven't even been named in that case. I mean, I think it's just going to be a lot of the same basically going on, and we're going to have to like get our shit together. The only time I've ever seen the politicians here in New York City willing to actually change shit when it comes to the police was when we were rioting. That was the only time when shit was getting burnt down and broken and windows were getting broken. That was and I've been reporting on this since maybe Mike Brown, Eric Garner, 2014. And the closest I've ever seen, people were arguing and begging the city council member, the mayor, to cut the NYPD budget for years, and they would just be like, yeah, just get at best. And it wasn't until there was fighting in 2020 that I actually saw them saying like, okay, maybe we'll cut $1 billion, please, just one. Okay, we'll. Before that, that wasn't even a $1 billion, even a $1 billion cut, which would have took us back to the Bloomberg years in terms of the NYPD budget was. That's all it would have done. Even that was like considered too much before the rioting. When the rioting happened and shit was getting broken and the politicians were scared of getting ran up on, people were protesting outside of people like Daniel Drum's houses and stuff like that here in New York. Yeah, that was the only time I ever seen politicians willing to actually change things when it came to policing in the city. Aside from that, I'm not even sure what else. I mean, like de Blasio was his closest thing we had to like a cop as a mayor, basically, because he kissed the cops' asses no matter what they did, defended them no matter what atrocities they did, lied for them.
No matter how much they hated him publicly.
Yeah, and they still hated him publicly. Yeah, he wasn't reactionary enough for them. And now we have a literal cop who's a freaking mayor. I don't even know how much worse it can get. I don't know how much worse it can get. So, yeah.
I think the problem that we're going to have primarily is that we're going to see him do all the bad things that we complained about when Giuliani was mayor, for example. But we're not going to. But you're not going to hear Democrats criticize him. You're not going to hear the liberals say anything negative about him because he's doing so much good here, and here. And that's what always gets us killed. Literally gets us killed. Koch had that. Koch had that. Dinkins, they wouldn't even give him a chance to do anything. Giuliani didn't have that. They didn't care. Bloomberg did have that, yet he was a Republican. So did de Blasio. And meanwhile, we're all still dying in the streets. It's under de Blasio that Eric Garner was murdered. I mean, I am right on that. Am I? Yes. It was de Blasio.
Yeah. And many other people too. Deborah Danner, freaking Delron Small, freaking so many other people. Like
these are names no one knows.
Yes. Antonio Williams, freaking. There's so many people. There was a moment. There was a 2-month moment in end of 2019 where the cops killed 6 people.
Akai Gurley.
And Akai Gurley, another one. And one of those people got killed. And at the same time, a cop got killed at the same time because the cop and the person who got killed, Antonio Williams, were struggling on the floor, and other cops started shooting at them. Essentially, just started busting shots. Killed their fellow cop and Antonio Williams, then essentially like erased Antonio Williams from the freaking story and lifted up the name of this cop who got killed by his fellow cops and made him seem like a hero. This happened under de Blasio, man. Like these,
this is one of the things. Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot of work. Not just for folks in New York City, but for all of us out here, because we're all going to be concerned. We're all concerned. That's one of the things we learned from last year. We're all pissed off about this going on. That's why, even though it failed in Minneapolis, the Defund the Police initiative was put on the ballot. But in Cleveland, they got their civilian police review board. They got that. Austin, Texas, they were able to keep them from getting more cops.
More funding.
They was getting ready to hire. They was getting money to hire more cops in Austin, Texas, and Austin, Texas. No, you don't either. So we do see some efforts that are successful. So we know that we can do something in other parts of the country as well. We just basically have to stay on top of them and lend that support. That's that's the main reason why I asked you that question, because I want to know.
We should never forget. We should never forget last year that poll where a majority of people approved of burning down that Minneapolis police precinct. I think that provides me with a little bit of hope for the people in this damn country. Like, some people have some sense in this country, like when a poll like that happens. So like, yeah, that gives me a little bit of hope.
So maybe Heather McDonald should take that to heart and be careful, and she should be careful what she wishes for. Because little known fact, we can do this a hell of a lot better than they can. A hell of a lot better. They stormed the Capitol on January 6th. We stormed the world. And they fought us harder, and we stormed the world. And it's something to be proud of. It's something to be proud of, because it did come. It was organic, coming from people who were just in their case, they were fed up. They were frustrated. They knew that this should not be the way things were supposed to go. And because it was election year, the Democrats jumped on board and said, "Okay, we agree with you." And then after the election year, "Hey, Eric, what you doing for the next 4 years?"
I mean, that's essentially part of the Democratic Party's function, right? To kill social movements, essentially, and to defang them and neutralize them, right? And they're doing exactly what they always. I mean, shit. I remember when Black Lives Matter, 2014-15. That was a phrase that was controversial. You can say, "Oh my God, you're alienating people by saying Black Lives Matter." Don't say that. You have to be nuanced and blah blah blah. The same shit they say about defund the police, like all the same. But now, in 2020, after people started really breaking shit nationwide, and there was the concrete demand with it, defund the police. Then all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter became like a social force, a movement you had to like recognize.
And I'd like you to stay on for if you have time for the next 20 minutes, because we can segue when it comes to when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, into the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Because it was while we were in the streets saying that Black Lives Matter, that Kyle Rittenhouse killed 3 people. 3 people who happened to be white, incidentally.
He killed 2.
Killed 2, shot 3.
He killed 2 people, injured
one of them
third.
survived.
Yes. Yeah. So he's on trial right now for those cases. And the trial, I don't know about you, Christian, but the trial just seems a little bit off. I mean, I believe the prosecutors stopped today. They rested their case today.
From what I understand, the prosecution rested their case. I mean, what caught me, and I think what's catching a lot of people, is the weird judge, right? Like he was quoting some like I'm not a believer. I've said that on the show. I don't think any liberation can come through the colonizer's religion. That being said, I mean, this judge using some kind of like religious quotes to get his point across. It's just, it's not reading the room of where the country's at this time. Not allowing the prosecution to call the victims. It's just, I am not holding my breath expecting justice for this case. I can't. I mean, and for me, it's just, I pay attention to the case because I should, and because of this show. But honestly, I'm ready to be disappointed, and I'm ready to just move on to the next thing. I'm really ready to be disappointed with this Rittenhouse case.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a pleasant surprise if Rittenhouse is found guilty, but we got to recognize the system for what it was. I was actually surprised that Derek Chauvin a couple of months ago was found guilty. Yeah. And it's going to sit in jail for 22 years. I don't think he's going to sit in jail for 22 years. Still don't.
Yeah,
definitely not.
I mean, Rittenhouse. we see whenever a young white man commits a crime, we see like this infantilizing of them. They try to portray them as kids and, aw shucks, not knowing. At the end of the day, this kid had a gun. He was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. He had, I don't care about Second Amendment, all that. He had no business having a gun. He had no business having a gun in another state where he shouldn't have been. And, because he's.
No, and it's silly. We have to have these like silly conversations about like, well, he was there to try to protect property. He knew why he was there. He went to a Black Lives Matter protest with a gun because he thinks these black people are looting and robbing, and so I need to go shoot them. That's why he was there.
Trying to protect. Yeah,
like, we all have to act like he wasn't there for that. We all know that's why he was there.
So he wasn't there. Exactly. If you were there to help and they say, oh, he was doing all this and all that during the day, great. But at night, he was walking around with a gun and a rifle he had no business walking around with. Like, you're a kid, dude. You're not in your own state. You're not doing target practice. No one's breaking your house. You got no business with that gun. And whatever like weird, creepy, racist conspiracy theories he was believing, that's what led him to do it.
Yeah.
I'm one of the guys. I mean, I expressed when we talked about it last week. I think there is. I got kids, man. I got kids, and they're not developed yet. They don't understand the consequence. I know you say he's 17, so no, he's not a little kid, but he's still not a fully developed grown man. And I hold the people around him, his mother in particular, and his parents and these people he was hanging around with, more accountable. And that's just the way I feel, because I'm sorry, I didn't raise my kids. I'm not worried about my kids doing this, but also I know that my kids have made way less severe mistakes in their lives, and you have to have some understanding of that. And when a 17-year-old kid's been raised in an environment where white supremacy is allowed and violence is portrayed as glorified, what chance did this kid ever have? And I, for one, I wish we get some mental health care out of this at the very least. But I think what the problem is, and we discussed it last week, is if he's found innocent, he's going to be propped up as a hero by the right, and he's never.
He already is. He has a whole community. He
already is. And if he's found guilty, he's going to go to jail and make friends with the Aryan Brotherhood, and that's not going to work out for him either. I mean, this kid has no shot at being a normal and productive human being, and so that argument, I mean, it falls. But the prosecutor, the defense doesn't seem to be taking that tact early on. The defense is really leaning on the self-defense theory. And it could wind up, honestly, man, I think that's, that could get him off.
Yes, this country was built on people like him shooting people and then claiming self-defense.
He shouldn't have been there in the first place, and that's where the guilt lies. But the way the law was written,
if he was black, if he was Puerto Rican, they'd be dragging out his parents, his grandparents, what church he goes to, what school he goes to, what he's watching on TV. Yeah, I mean,
talking about gun violence, it would be gun violence.
You mentioned he was like, he's using this guise of I was there to protect property. Well, I guess I could get into a whole thing about my feelings on private property, but we'll save that for another conversation. But they had the owner of the business he was there to protect say, I ain't asked these fuckers to come out there with guns and protect my property. They just decided to show up and march around with them, and they weren't at the property. They were marching around the street when the incident happened because they were supposedly asked by community members to go protect this place and go protect that place. And that's not legal activity. Never mind having a gun at 17, that's not legal. It's not legal to walk around from place to place looking for people to shoot. That's not okay. That's not self-defense. So there's some problems with the self-defense argument, as I understand it through some media interpretations and some lawyerly counseling. But it's really is a toss-up, and given the history of this country,
you'll get
he has a chance of just walking away completely clean. They have a lot of charges on him. There's a chance there could be some kind of split verdict. Anything's possible. You'll
be seeing him on like as a right-wing talking head in the future. They'll be bringing him on like
on Sunshine.
George Zimmerman. Look what George Zimmerman is. Look what George Zimmerman is.
George Zimmerman is the brown lapdog for white supremacy.
And Michael Raynal, who shot a fascist in Portland, got killed by the U.S. Marshals for what he did when he shoots somebody at at a protest. When you shoot a fascist at a protest, you get the
And what
U.S.
did Trump
Marshals
say?
coming to shoot you, yo. But when a fascist
said,
goes across state lines because he wants to shoot black people, let's be very clear. That's what it is. He's gonna get off.
Yeah, Reinhold actually shot and killed somebody who was shooting at people, granted with a paintball gun. But so what? Amadou Diallo was dead today because he was pulling out his wallet. Mm-hmm. So, and what did Trump say that really gave away the store? They saw him. They didn't want to arrest him, so they.
He bragged about shooting. He bragged about shooting them. He bragged about it, like, yo, we took care of him. Basically, we took care of that. That is done now. That issue's done.
Oh yeah, and Jamie Wickline just reminded us that Ahmaud Arbery's case is going on now too, and that doesn't look promising.
And also in that case, one of the guys is a former cop too. Just want to remind.
Yes, I thought both. I thought there was two, but yeah, you're right.
At least one of them is a former cop. Yeah. Definitely.
It was a cop and his little fucking prick kid.
Yeah,
it's his little a cop and his kid and some other douchebag. Now they changed laws in Georgia, and I think it's noted that the public pressure after that murder, and they're gonna get off over there too. Watch this shit. They changed it was a Republican state government and a Republican governor that changed the laws that the activists were asking them to change. The Democrats were nowhere to be found. And it just shows you, people got to rise up. And it was because of the enormous public outcry that they went into the laws and they knew what law the defense is going to use. They already know so they changed it already. And it's very sad that it can't be applied because, it was on the books at the time of this murder. But that's a very sick case, man. A very sick one. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I was distracted a little bit because because somebody was trying to hit me up on Twitter about something that was going on, and this concerns New York or Staten Island. But it does concern New York because it concerns, I said, speaking of brown lapdogs, Nick Fuentes is in NYC right now.
Oh my God.
Who is I'm naive. I don't know who is Nick Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes is a Hispanic dude out of Chicago, young kid who runs the Groyper movement, the whole American First thing.
Yeah.
Basically,
theocratic fascism.
Yeah, pretty much. They're punk asses because they don't really want to. They want to confront the Republican Party, but they're not going to come after Antifa directly unless they're online. They'll talk shit. They'll talk the shit to anti-fascists online. Offline, no, they're keeping the distance. But they were there during January 6th. And they were there. A couple of them were in Charlottesville. As a matter of fact, the American Renaissance Conference is going to be taking place in Nashville, Tennessee this weekend, and one of them and two members of the whole Groyper thing are going to be speaking there. One is Vincent James Fox, who was at January 6th, and the other is Michelle Malkin, who was a dark
another brown lapdog for white supremacy. Yeah, one of the brown lapdog for white supremacy,
and makes no bones about it either. She knows what she's doing. She writes, she contributes to white supremacist publications all the damn time. Well, they're going to be speaking at this thing. So, but in the meantime, Nick Fuentes, the guy who runs the whole thing, and who is on borrowed time his damn self, but you don't know it, is in New York City through Saturday.
Staten Island. You said Staten Island,
and I just got told that there is this protest, an anti-vax protest, at Staten Island University Hospital tomorrow at 1 p.m.
Oh my God! Dumb people together again.
In a hospital, near a hospital.
Telling me this, according to whom is the person telling me this, Fuentes is going to be at this thing.
Okay.
I'm all for getting some snipers out there with dart guns and darting those fuckers with inoculations.
Can we not say that on the podcast?
Is it darting them with inoculations?
You mean the darts with the suction cups, right?
Yeah. No, with Moderna or whatever. I mean, it just go
with the vaccine in their salad dressing. But
okay, so you trying to get you want darts so they get the vaccine? Okay.
If these dummies are gonna get together in a group, man, let's take advantage. I'm saying, man, it's a lot of.
gotta
someone
ask.
home good shots. You know, get them out there with some syringes and stick them in a rifle. Doop, doop, doop. Everybody wins.
When we hear about Black Lives Matter, a lot of people don't realize that there is no like national leadership of Black Lives Matter, that it's a series of like independent, non-hierarchical organizations that really don't have bearing. Like one, you know, Black Lives Matter in New York City doesn't really have any bearing on what's going on in California, right? So like that being said, who is this jabroni from New York representing Black Lives Matter, claiming to represent Black Lives Matter? That's the anti-vaxxer guy. Because I'm seeing him all over social media. Who do we know anything about this guy?
You talk about Hawk?
Is that who he is? Because I never heard about him until this anti-vax stuff, and all of a sudden, the people who are normally anti-vax want nothing to do with people of color, or scientists until one agrees with them, and then they plaster them all over the place. Do you have any info on who this guy is?
I think you're talking about Hawk from Black Lives Matter Greater New York.
Is he? He's an anti-vaxxer, black dude.
Was that the Kyrie Irving thing?
Probably. I don't know. He might have been.
Oh man, I don't even know what the hell he's on when it comes to that. I know who he is. I know I've met Hawk. I know Hawk. There's a lot. You'd be surprised. There's a few people in people who frequently protest over the last year who are anti-vax. Like it's not a majority, but there's a substantial like group of people who are anti-vax. But for the most part in New York City, the anti-vax movement is essentially the same people you saw at that rally supporting the golpistas. The golpistas are the anti-vax movement.
Same right-wing types.
But there's also a small contingent of people who overlap with the Black Lives Matter movement, essentially in New York, who are don't believe in vaccines, don't want to get vaccines, don't want to get vaccinated and stuff like that. So
and not just this one either.
I mean, and we've talked about in the past, we had oh my God, Siobhan Torres, and we had her before COVID. Before COVID came out, we did a whole thing on anti-vaxxers. This is months before COVID even hit, and Siobhan talked about how anti-vax organizations will often use people of color as pawns in their agenda.
No,
definitely,
definitely. No,
yes, we got about 3 minutes before we have to call it a night. So I do not want any to leave people hanging. People gonna want to know where to find you.
Me and some friends, some cop watchers and journalists have started a new outlet that we're trying to get off the ground, trying to get funding for. Copwatch.media is the website. Check out our videos and articles. We're going to be, we're trying to get money in order to pay Black and brown people to write about the cops in their own communities. That's basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to get funding for that. So please try to support us. You can find me at Ash Agony on Twitter. That's where you can find most of my stuff. And get vaccinated, people, please. Please. At this point, there's no reason not to get vaccinated. The data's in.
I just wanted to jump in really quick, Ash. I want to give you a shout out for the Lolita T-shirt behind you. I couldn't tell who it was when I saw it. I was like, you got to give a shout out to Lolita. For those that don't know, Lolita Lebron was a Puerto Rican independentista. She was the one of the few in the 1950s that stormed Congress in an attempt to demonstrate for Puerto Rican independence. So
down with La Junta in Puerto Rico. Okay, down with the fiscal control board. Out with get the colonizers out of fucking Puerto Rico right now. Now.
Oh, Daryle, before you go, hold on. We can't because we talked about New York way too much. And I'm from New Jersey, so
we didn't talk about New York enough. So Ash,
I love you, right? Ash. No, there's a lot of great people in New York. I just as a general rule, being from New Jersey, it nauseates me to talk about New York for a long period of time. but I seen some shit going on in Boston, man. I mean, we got Rod and Lauren going to be on the. Man, you go to Boston for like 15 minutes and you're fucking around with the fish. And I saw some stuff on Twitter, man. So what's going on in Boston, man?
Anti-mandate, they said. It was supposed to be an anti-mandate rally. And the thing is, it was a fascist group that was up there. A fascist group that used to call themselves Boston Free Speech, or they would call themselves Refuse Fascism. I'm sorry, that's not them. That's Refuse Marxism. But now they call themselves, because I guess the heat's on, Super Happy Fun America.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And they're the ones who put together the straight pride parades. And in many respects, I won't even say many respects. I'll be fair. The Proud Boys are all about them. As a matter of fact, Randy Ireland from Hell's Gate chapter, Hell's Kitchen chapter of the Proud Boys was up there cussing me out because I called him a racist or something like that. I mean, shoe fits, baby. But anyway, they had this rally. They went up there to speak and could only speak for about a half hour before we asked them to leave. They got their they're not going to get the return on the deposit back on their van because the windshield got smashed. A few people, there was some fisticuffs being thrown, particularly I think if I remember correctly, somebody said that one of the January 6th insurrectionists that had been arrested was a part of it. There were two of them from Super Happy Fun America that were picked up for January 6th, and they were both there that day. It was a pretty interesting little outing. And we're going to be able to talk to, by the way, Rod Weber of 2020 The Dumpster Fire fame next week. He'll be on next week, and it's going to be an interesting show, especially considering what's happening with them. So we'll talk to Rod about that next week and about last weekend's rally. But I want to just before we go, I want to just say, Ash, you're always welcome back.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was awesome. I love being here, bro. Please invite me back. Please invite me back.
Oh, we must.
Maybe. Well, thank you very much.
Let me check something out here. I just want to check something on. I just want to see what the calendar says about January 1st. I want to see when January 1st is going to be. January 1st is on a Saturday. Oh boy, that means New Year's Eve is on a Friday. That's going to be crazy. So I would like to have you on again right after
New Year's.
Right after, because that's the day that Eric Adams gets inaugurated.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm coming up there to shoot. I'm coming up there to shoot some film.
Okay. All right.
Because I don't drink. So I know I won't have a hangover the next day, which means I'll be awake.
Yeah.
So I'm coming up there, and I'm gonna be there for the inauguration and see what we can see.
Oh man! All right. Okay. I might go with you. We'll see.
I don't expect much, but I want to start. It's gonna be cold. I want to start this year off right. So Ash, thank you much. And we need to have you back on. And we will have you back on. So
thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Christian, thank you for being with us again.
As always. Love it. Love being a part of the show.
And Brian left us. So and I want to thank y'all for being here. Bye, Brian. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the Ida Vox Report for Tuesday, November 9th. Next week, as I said, we're going to talk 2020 The Dumpster Fire. And with Rod and Lauren. They're the three Peters. They're the only three Peters that we have. And we're going to change that because we're going to have to bring some folks on again. So next week, we will see you. And until then, peace.
Strap on your helmets, kiddos. Rod Weber's here to call out bullshit whether you like it or not.
Is Mr. Weber being detained, sir?
I'm a documentarian.
There's a fine tradition of trolling for a cause throughout history.
It's like he's putting a strap on and owning Putin. Getting him. I am, of course, the only candidate who will open the case about Epstein. You're a corporate shell, Mike! You wrote the Patriot Act, ushering in 1,000 years of George Orwell.
We're calling out the bullshit that is part of the system that we're living under.
Well, how can you protect our freedom when our kids are dying?
If there's a virus out there, you take it, you get it in, and you get rid of it.
You know, it's a fine line between a cop and a fucking criminal.
The New York Times where we endorse two people. We only get one vote.
We have never had anything like this. American history.
This whole argument about the violent left falls apart when you stand in front of a Proud Boy, because they throw the first punch.
Stop! Antifa is not an organization. Antifa is an idea.
I think that is a great example of ethical trolling at its best.